Well, that was pretty interesting, wasn't it? That was from the Commonwealth Games. And I guess I should probably go over that and maybe break it down or something. You know what's really weird is that the screen is making my hair look like the guy from Bob's Big Boy, you know, who had the funny looking hair in Bob's Big Boy with the hamburger. I kind of look like the Bob's Hamburger Big Boy guy tonight, or maybe like one of the original members of the Split Ends. Because when I don't have the green screen on behind me, the hair looks kind of similar in some ways. Well, at least similar as how it looked when I looked in the mirror before I started today's show or tonight's show. Well, thank you for being here. And welcome to another edition of Sunday Night AstroLive. We're going to be here for a couple hours, digging in to the story of the day, which is the dreaded triple stellium of Mars, Uranus, and the true node in Taurus. You know, last week I got a lot of positive feedback because I was trying to look at this from a different perspective, right? Because everything, it seems now, is really front loaded with either something extremely doomy or extremely positive. And trust me, there's a lot of doomy stuff that is out there in part of the mix. And it's really tempting to look at this triple conjunction to fall into that category. And I think I did a fairly decent job trying to articulate and elucidate what, how you can deal with the psychological aspects of an impending astrological alignment. And I think I was pretty successful. And I think that there are some astrological alignments that you can't really get out of. You just have to deal with them when they arrive. Like, for instance, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction of 2020, we saw that coming a mile away. And when it happened, it wasn't that shocking if you really knew what to look for. And it was really the end of time in a lot of ways. I mean, that's what it was about. It was the end of time, and time did end. It did end when we had the COVID lockdown. Looks like I'm fucking bald here. I'm really not bald. I actually have hair. You just can't see it. It's okay. It's good to have a semi-humbling experience with one's theoretical hair, right? Anyway, time ended. And that's what we talked about, at least on this show and in other circles. And we haven't been the same. And this happens. I noted that this happens in every decade where there is a president that's elected during a zero decade. You look at Kennedy, and Kennedy's elected during a zero decade. And look, I know it's not the rest of the world, and I'm talking about the United States. But this story, our story, in a lot of ways, has been the global story up to this point. It may not be the global story moving forward, by the way. Like, it may be something very different. It may be a different kind of story. And some people might be very thrilled and pleased and happy about that. And I could see why. I could totally see why. Like, yeah, it's kind of like when I was a kid, hating on the Dallas Cowboys because they would always go to the Super Bowl, or hating on Notre Dame because they were always on Saturday no matter what, and they always seem to be relatively, or hating on Duke. Like, these are sports analogies. I almost went to the Boston Celtics, but I don't hate the Boston Celtics. I had an interesting conversation with Rue 9, aka Robin, prior to the show, whom I love dearly. He's a great guy. And we were kind of going back and forth a little bit about Bill Russell, who just passed away, by the way. And Bill Russell took the jab. And it's one of those things where it's like, I think I even wondered, probably go back in my Twitter feed, like he's on the clock. I think I said that. And Bill was older. He was 88. So the clock was ticking anyway. But he made a pretty bold statement. You know, he was one of those guys like Hank Aaron. Both Hank Aaron and Bill Russell, by the way, are both Aquarians. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but they're both Aquarians, and they both came out and, well, they were pitching. They were pitching for the spike. I love this water, by the way. Mountain Valley, it's the best water. Went to HEB yesterday. Not a single bottle of Topo Chico was available. The only part of HEB, that's a grocery store here in Texas. The only part of HEB that was wiped out. Everything else was there except for the Topo Chico and a few other sparkling water items. I don't think that's going to be the case in the future. We might be seeing a whole lot more of that. Just an FYI. But yeah, so Russell came out and what did he say? I'm not blocking this shot, because he was known as a famous shot blocker. He said, this is one shot I'm not going to block. And I looked at it. I mean, this dude's he's on the clock. TikTok, you know, and it's a shame, right? It's a shame because, you know, he and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is in the same spot. Although I don't think I ever saw Kareem actually physically take a shot. Kareem he's an Aries. He got into it. He got into it. Kyrie Irving, who's an Aries, who didn't want to take the shot. Kyrie Irving is headstrong. Kareem is headstrong, and so Kareem he was not down with Kyrie's independence. But I don't remember seeing any PSA where Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he wouldn't do it. I can tell you that right now. Kareem, I think he has a dispensary or something. He was way into Chinese medicine and alternative health long before it became, you know, popular in vogue. And yeah, I didn't see him take it, but he advocated it. So Bill Russell, I hope you get through the Skynet and find your way home. Those are my true thoughts here and intentions on the passing of Bill Russell, who is generally regarded one of the players that changed the game of basketball, along with Wilt Chamberlain and George Mikan. Those are the three big men. George Mikan changes basketball. He's the first big man who can actually just do more than just stand there. He can shoot. He can pass. George Mikan was a game changer. And then Wilt came along, and he was a whole different breed. And then Bill Russell came along, and he was different than Wilt. I don't think he was as great an athlete as Wilt at all. But as far as basketball goes and being a team player, and the Celtics had a great team and had a great run. Anyway, sign off, Bill Russell. See you later. Bye for now. So here we are. We're just getting ramped up here. We're coming into the phase of the triple conjunction, the stellium. That's what it's called with astrology, when there's three or more aspects that are together. It's called the stellium. So we're going to look at the stellium again tonight. But unlike last week, where I was doing my best to paint a more positive, dare I say, prepared picture of this event, we're going to kind of get into the weeds a little bit tonight. And I played that image, or I played that video early on to sort of set a tone for the show and to talk about it from a bit of a different perspective tonight, and look at some bull imagery, some bull mythology. I actually have the original chart for Kiev and Ukraine from 882, which ties into this stellium and this energy. I also have the chart of the New York Stock Exchange, the day that it opened, at the time that it opened. And guess what? It ties into this day, these degrees, and this energy. So we're going to look at both of those tonight. We'll look at the chart of the moment again, and we're going to get into Aldebaran, which is the bullseye, and the bullseye being in the constellation of Taurus, and some of the archetypal meaning around Aldebaran, which is, it's interesting because Aldebaran and Antares theoretically oppose one another, but they're both very warrior-like. They're both very Mars-like in their application. So with Mars in play here, and Aldebaran, by the way, I believe is at 23 Gemini, if I'm not mistaken, but it's in the constellation of Taurus. So there is this warlike vibe that's in the air. And we know that Nancy Pelosi, who is an Aries, by the way, speaking of war, has somehow decided that they're going to go to, or she's going to, whatever pronoun you want to use for somebody who is having a more difficult time than ever completing a sentence, a coherent sentence. She's somewhere supposedly on her way to Taiwan. That's the rumor. The rumor has it that she landed in Hawaii and that she's on her way to Taiwan. And what did the Chinese say? The Chinese said, well, if Nancy Pelosi goes to Taiwan, we're going to shoot her down. We're going to shoot that plane down. Do you think that that's really what's going to happen? Knowing what we know about these so-called politicians and their deals and their allegiances and their contracts and their alliances, do you think that anything is spontaneous, really? I don't think so. Last week we looked at Robert Downey Jr., who was out pimping bamboo TP, and he was out pimping mealworm protein, right? He has to do that. That's part of his contract. When you see somebody like Nicole Kidman, what was she eating? Was she eating some kind of cricket or bug? Yep, that's what she was doing. And then you had Angelina Jolie eating what, tarantulas, frying them up in a wok with some peppers and onion. I mean, geez, come on. Why are these people doing this? It's because they're in on this, right? They have their contracts being called. And this is what Pelosi, I believe, is doing. She's having her contract called. And the Chinese know exactly where she is. It's no big deal, right? But what is it going to be used to be the pretext of? I mean, that's kind of where we are. Excuse me. But with this intense and volatile energy in the air, it can be very, very warlike and explosive. So we're going to try to cover that tonight to the best of our ability and diffuse some of the tension that's in the air, because the tension is palpable. There is a palpable tension in the air. If you can feel it, I know a lot of you can. And we're getting to this point where we're reaching critical information mass, CIM, critical information mass. And what are we reaching critical information mass about? The carjack. If you know what the carjack is, I don't have to elaborate anymore. If you don't know what the carjack is, you probably know somebody that got the carjack. And there's a very good chance that they're not doing so well. That's what I'm talking about. So there are more and more of these stories that are bubbling up. I keep reading more and more articles about the mainstream media. More and more people now are starting to put the facts and the figures together. You're having nurses that are doing TikTok videos, or they're doing YouTube videos and expressing remorse, regret. I just saw a doctor who came forward in Australia, and he was angry. He was speaking out against what's happened, and he was basically pointing the finger at everybody in the room, including himself. because he was in on it and he knew it. And he's probably really pissed that he agreed to, be somebody who suggested that people have that experience, promoted it. He's probably really pissed at himself. So he talked to a whole room of other physicians and called them out and looked like a raging madman. But again, he probably was feeling that and didn't have that. So people don't have. So here's my thought. I got a little bit of pushback on Twitter, but I think it's okay. Not to put pushback's fine, but there are people like this doctor who he's not trained to be a public orator. He's not trained to understand rhetoric or philosophy. He's not James Lindsay. He's not Peter Boghossian. He's not one of those people. What is he trained in? He's trained in theoretically helping people and attending to their physical and every now and then occasionally emotional needs, psychological, maybe mostly physical. He's not trained in being able to get up in front of a room of people and say something that unhooks them in a way that they're like, oh, wow, he's right. I did fuck up. He's not trained for that. He's coming off raw emotion, raw feeling, and that's fine. I mean, it's fine. And if it's very easy in that environment to dismiss him as being someone who's a madman, right? Like Charlton Heston at the end of Soylent Green, screaming that Soylent Green is people. He's right. He's totally right. He's telling you the truth. But if you're listening to him in that environment, what's going on with you? Well, you're probably thinking he's fucking nuts. But that's okay. I'm not saying, that it's not okay. My point was that people aren't equipped to be able to talk about these things in ways that are sophisticated because they're not trained for it. And who is really? I mean, how did we get training to be in this place now? Right? Because we're in a very different kind of environment, a very different kind of world, requires different skill sets than many of us have been raised on. And so we're kind of learning on the fly here. And that goes into the Mars-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, right? It destroys form. That's what we're talking about here, because Taurus is form. It is fixed, hard earth form. Today, John Levi did a show. I always talk about John on Sunday night. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I just saw a show, but they seem to be timely. And John he's a Taurus, by the way. I think I've actually looked at his chart on the show. But today he was talking about brick, which is a very, Taurus thing. And he was looking at examples of melted brick. And there's another channel he was talking about called Kairos, Kiros. I don't think that's the only name of the channel. I'll leave the channel link here so you guys can check it out. And this is somebody in California who's looking at the same thing. He's looking at this idea of the melted brick phenomena. That is Mars, Uranus in Taurus, right? Where there's this heat, there's this intensity, and there's this transmutation of matter, but it's being forged, right? So we're that too. We're matter as well. We're like that piece of brick from Tartaria that theoretically is being melted and forged. I mean, even the sun is so fucking hot. We feel like that at times. That's another player here, by the way. But this is what's going on, right? Right. We're being melted, forged, recast, hopefully into something improved, something that has more novelty and complexity, because we may have been born for this world, but we weren't trained for this world that we're living in now. We just weren't. The majority of us weren't. Some of you maybe, but how do we navigate these times that we're in? I mean, they're fucking crazy. You know what I'm talking about. You know that we're dealing with phenomena that is utterly bizarre, things we've never seen before. And some people say, well, it's not good for you. Oh, takes you out of your comfort zone, doesn't it? Well, I guess, but I'm sure there are things that would take those people out of their comfort zone as well. Like, I don't know, taking a drive through the South. There are people who will not do that. They're like freaked out by the South, taking them out of their comfort zone. I was watching this this channel this week called City Nerd. And this guy goes into cities. He gets real nerdy with cities and he breaks them down. He definitely has a certain POV, and his POV is definitely socially conscious. We'll put it that way. And he was talking about all these underrated cities. And the underrated cities he was talking about were like, well, the number 10 underrated city on my list, he has all these criterion, is New York City. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Have you seen what's going on in the subways of New York? Hello, South Node Scorpio, right? The underworld. It's getting fucking crazy down there in the subways of New York. But that's okay. It's part of his criterion for the 10th best and underrated city in the country. His most underrated city is fucking Chicago. Chicago. That's a bull city, by the way, right? The stockyards, the heartland. That is definitely a bull city. But nowhere on that list was anything in the South. Like, nah, I'm not going there. Nah, I'm not going there. It doesn't meet my criteria, if you know what I'm saying. Too many F-250s for this guy. Anyway, I'm getting a little off track here, but I'm talking about the process. And we're looking at Uranus and Mars and the true node, the process. And the process has to do with us being, my father was he was a jeweler and he made both these rings, right? And as a kid, I would watch him. And jewelry has this process called vulcanization. Like if you do the lost wax casting method, this vulcanization. And so he would have this wax model of a ring, and it would be in this cylinder, right? This cylinder, and it would be in some kind of, I forget, like a plaster of Paris or something. And he'd put that into an oven, and then the oven would melt the wax, and then the plaster of Paris stuff would harden around it. So there would be the mold for the wax. I used to watch this when I was a kid. And then he would take that thing and he would pick it up, right from, he wouldn't waste any time. Once it was done, he'd take it out of the, his little oven there, and he would put it in this centrifugal force. What do you call it? Like it's not a pendulum, but it's this thing that you wind up and it uses centrifugal force. And then there was this little area where you would put metal, whether it was silver or it was gold, and he'd take his torch and he'd get it really super hot. He had, the torches with the tanks and everything, and he'd melt that gold or silver, and he'd get it to when it was like just pure liquid. I used to watch it, be totally fascinated by it. And then he would unlock the centrifugal caster and it would start to spin. And then all that hot gold or hot silver would shoot into the cylinder where the mold was, and it would occupy that space. And he would do that until it would stop spinning, right? And then while it was still hot again, we would take it and he'd bring it into the bathroom, and I'd have a bowl of water ready, cold water, like splash down. And then it was kind of like, finding the Cracker Jack toy in the, in the sink. Well, that's where we are, right? That we're in that place right now. And we're these rough metals. They're precious. Like you're a precious metal. You're gold. Let's say you're gold. You're a precious metal. And right now with Mars, Uranus, right? We're getting the heat and we're being melted. Literally, we're being melted because we don't know. We weren't really trained for this world. We're kind of learning on the fly, right? We're learning how to communicate with one another. We're learning how to, and reality has just become so wildly different, even in the past year. Right? This year was not like last year. It wasn't like, trannies on parade. Like last year was not really trannies on parade. This year, Pride Month, it went into fucking warp speed, hyperdrive, hyper acceleration, warp space, right? So we weren't really prepared to deal with a world like that. We're not prepared to deal with how everything morphed so quickly based on a number of different variables. And when we go into a process like this with Mars and Uranus and the true note, and they're all in Taurus, which is an earth sign, which means we're here, right? It's tangible, it's 3D, and we're getting heated up. We're being spun into this kind of centrifugal operation, and then we're being shot into a new mold. And let's hope it's the right mold, right? Let's hope it's the right mold. It's interesting, he made this ring a long time ago. And the idea is the Thunderbird, but the Thunderbird, I believe, really is the Phoenix, right? And he made this a long time ago, before I started to use that name for my last name. So it's kind of weird and fitting in a lot of ways. And that's, that's where we are. We're going through these intense changes, and it's forcing us to kind of break down and get, really, really hot, right? But there's a new purpose that comes through this. There's a new purpose for all of us that comes through this. And part of that heating up process has to do with the elements in our environment, the pressure, the heat, right? That's part of it. And the other part of that process is the refinement process that goes along with it. Because if you're not picking up skills along the way now, if you're not figuring out how to deal with people or how to deal with the dominant paradigm, or how to deal with this cascade of illusion, right? You better get up to speed. I mean, we're all in a classroom now. We're all figuring this out on the fly. And sometimes we make mistakes, like that doctor in Australia. I bet you he goes back and looks at that video and says, gee, I wish I could have done this differently. Well, it's his first crack at, speaking his truth, his experience. And it doesn't always go over great. He wasn't trained for that. He was trained to help people with their bodies. He's not trained to be fucking, Thomas Jefferson or Thomas Paine or whatever. That's not what he was trained for. But give him a few cracks, and maybe by number 2 or 3 or 4, he's gone through that fire. He's gone through that fire and he's been forged. And there's this new form that comes out of it. We're all there now. And this is Mars and Uranus. And we're all in it. We're all having to deal with these intense, elemental, very dynamic variables in our lives. So we're going to get into more of this tonight. And I want to go back and look at that opening segment because it's very interesting. And I may say some things that, might alienate a few people or piss a few people off. But when I say these things, I'm not saying them for any kind of shock value to be contrarian. But what I'm doing my best is to interpret the symbolism. And here we're talking about astrological symbolism to the best of my ability. There may be another astrologer that may have a different lens or different point of reference or a different framework, and they may interpret it differently. And that's, I would say that, that's fine, except, I'm right. No, I'm just kidding. That's fine. And so hopefully we could have some kind of dialogue around it. Hopefully, although I've been through a few things on Twitter recently that don't leave me with a lot of positive vibes around that. Okay, let me see if I can see where you guys are and just give a quick shout out to everybody that's here. And thank you for being here tonight. Let's see. We have Christy Taylor. What's going on, Christy? Good to see you. Love of Scorpios here. There's my man, DJ MC. It's going to be the return of the Crimmies this Friday. Looking forward to that. Gucci the Goats is here. What's going on, Jake? Good to see you. Jolie Wells. There's my man, Tom Jordan. Benito. Hey, Benito, I was thinking about you the other day. WC Ray in the house. What's going on? Brandy McWilliams. I call it the planetary traffic jam. Bill Smith. What's going on, Bill? Good to see you. Welcome here. There she is, the lovely and talented one, Dr. J. Joan S. She's here. Astro Sam in the house. Let's see. Mickey King. Hey, what's going on, Mickey? Good to see you. Who else? Lavita Anastasia. Rob, I'm loving your style. Thanks. I appreciate it. Let's see. Wendy Eater. Hey, Wendy, the beautiful one. She's here. Tough as nails. I suddenly reached for a falling object. I'm slightly injured my shoulder and neck this morning. Feels very Mars, Uranus conjunct. Yeah, you know, especially the neck. You're getting into algal territory there, aren't you? Yep. Tinfoil Tiara's here. What's going on, TFT? Let's see who else. Miss Nikki. She's around. Stephanie S. Christina Renee. What's going on, Christina Renee? Russell Gill. Evening back at you. Let's see. I think Brandy's commenting on Nancy. She says, I think it's convenient she's traveling as news is coming out about stock habits. Good call, Brandy. Very good call. Let's see who else we have. EB. Good evening, EB. Did I say Tough as Nails is here? If not, I'll do it again. Hi, Tough as Nails. Steve Letro. He says Serbia and Kosovo are the pretext. It could be. I think there isn't Serbia getting like more. It all feels so fucking Lord of the Rings-ish, doesn't it? How they're getting all these weapons being spewed out of the Eye of Sauron. That's what it feels like. Veronica Braley, the horse whisperer, is here. Let's see who else we have. Reezy. Hi, Reezy. Let's see. CC Jones. Fantastic. I saw someone who's had 3 jabs and COVID 2 times. That is not a coincidence. Mary Mansfield. Hi, Mary. Into King. My friends tried chocolate scorpions in Thailand. I would try a chocolate scorpion in Thailand. When in Thailand, do as the Thais. I wouldn't make it a regular staple of my diet. You know, I had one of those cricket protein bars one time. They sell them down at the HEB. I thought to myself, let me try a cricket protein bar. This is before the bug craze of 2022. And, you know, it was okay. Did I go back for seconds with the cricket protein bar? No, I didn't. But I said to myself, you know, let me get out ahead of this thing. The bugs are coming. I'm going to try a bug bar. It was okay. Who else do we have? There are parasites and bugs. Lots of them. You're absolutely right, Steve. And what is it called? Chitin? Chitin? There's chitin in bugs. A lot of people are highly allergic to it. Any links for the guy he's talking about now? Who was I talking about? My father? I don't think so. What's going on, Kelly? Paper Dragon. First, do no harm. At least he spoke out. Yes. I would agree. Look, he gets points for speaking out. And I got into it on Twitter for a little bit. And not too much. And when we get into a public space and people disagree with us, I think that I keep trying to find a way to have a dialogue, right? So I put in, I'm not, you know, if I was somebody there who was part of, you know, his world, I would have said, oh, I got to turn this off. I would have said, oh, that guy's batshit crazy, right? But as long as one person here's what he has to say, and maybe it's the one person that needs to hear it, because that's the whole other thing. Is like we think sometimes we have to win over an entire room, and that may not be the case. And maybe for all of his awkwardness and all of his Soylent Green as people kind of intensity, he got to the right person, and maybe that's all that counts. So I give him big props for speaking out. Let's see. Are we speaking about he who rhymes with grouchy? I think so. Kabuki Theater in the house. What's going on, Kabuki? I believe so. I think we're a critical. So if I had a way to highlight a comment, I would highlight Stephanie S.'s comment. More doctors will speak out. They're going to snap. I agree with that, which means that we are being pushed now into a place where whatever is going to happen has to be bigger than the thing that could happen. This is important because we are tilting into the greatest story and the greatest tragedy, the greatest global genocide. And I'm talking global genocide. I'm not talking a regional genocide. And this is not to downplay regional genocides by any stretch. Regional genocides, they're genocides by any other name. This is global in its reach. This is huge. And we're in a place now where in order to blot that out, there has got to be something bigger than that. This is the danger of the time that we're in now. This is the potential what sort of explosive nature of the Uranus-Mars true node conjunction, because we're headed towards critical mass. We are headed towards critical mass. It cannot be denied. It cannot be denied. When you've got nurses speaking out, you've got doctors speaking out, some of whom are deeply regretful of decisions that they've made. Do you think that the people that set that up are going to allow that to come forward and absolutely and utterly dismantle their system? The answer to that is patently no. But just like the doctor who was not very adroit when he was vehemently sharing his point of view, his experience, and his what's the word I'm looking for? Extreme level of threat with what had taken place and what continues to take place. It got to maybe one person, maybe two, maybe three, and that's all that might count in that moment, right? So what's happening now? What is happening now at that level? Because we're there, man. The dam is starting to break with this stuff. That all it takes is one or two or three people in key positions, and everything could shift until, even if something else is being put into play to make that thing bigger. If you think about this now, it's got to be bigger than that thing. That's pretty fucking big. And I think somewhere inside of us, we know, right? We know that this is happening. And I've talked about this before. Part of us is really primal. There's a part of our nature that are like animals on the plains. We're like four-leggeds in the woods, and we can sense that there's a fire in the distance. Animals can sense tectonic shifts in the earth before they happen. We are not solely disconnected from that world. That's part of our world. We share that part of our experience with that part of our planetary family. But what's happened is that we have so much interference and so much distraction and so many things going through our veins that it keeps us from having the ability to understand those things at a primary level. And so they're kind of these distant feelings of dread on the horizon or free-floating anxiety. But it's there, and we can feel it, right? We can feel it because intuitively, and this is all very Taurus stuff, right? When you're in Taurus, you are right in your freaking first chakra. That's where you are with Taurus. It connects you to the earth. It connects you to the earth and survival And that's where we all are. You go back, and I've said this before, you go back and you look at what happened in 2020. The first thing that they did not make available to people was what? Toilet paper. And you think, well, that's really mundane. No, it's not, because you wipe your ass with it. You wipe your ass with toilet paper. So what happens? Everybody is like out of toilet paper. It goes back to that time when you were a kid, before you were toilet trained, which is a very second house kind of experience. And you ever remember as a kid, like, and we all have experiences kind of like that, right? We all have an experience where, oh shit, I'm not going to make it, right? It's that oh shit moment. For me, it was an oh piss moment. And it was in Madison Square Garden at the circus. And I had to pee my pants. And I told my parents, I got to pee my pants. And I didn't make it. Damn. I was so upset. So upset. You know why I was upset? Because I didn't make it. And now we had to fucking leave the circus. And I was looking forward to some really good cotton candy and who knows what else, right? Anyway, that's what they did. They took us back to our childhood. They reduced us back to babies who theoretically were scrambling literally to keep their shit together. You don't think that was part of the whole deal? Of course it was. Just like recently, what's been a real Tauran / Scorpionic crisis that not all of us, but a lot of us have to go through. Lack of baby formula. Now, I'm not a baby formula guy. I feel like if you are a chest feeder, no. If you're a woman and you have some operable technology to breastfeed your children, it's what God made them for, right? Go to it. Not everybody can do it. So they have these formulas, right? For better or worse. I'm not going to judge people. But it's the same thing, right? Oh my God, these babies are not going to get their formula. Oh my God. So where does it go? It goes right in to that whole survival, and the survival is being able to, nurture and care for another life, which is again, very Taurian. So this is where we are now. We can sense it, right? We can sense it's in the air. We can feel it. We're like the four-leggeds in the forest. We know something is coming. We know something is up. Whether it's something bigger than the last thing, which is bigger than was supposed to be bigger than the last thing. It's still big in its own way. Or the signs, which we talked about last week, food, the whole food crisis. We keep reading about how everything is happening in the supply chain with food, and these farms are burning and they're having to exterminate cows. And now there's limits on, nitrogen that they can pack on trains. And, that's all out there. That's out there. And what about the money and having to spend all this money on gas to get to a job that, doesn't pay you as much or as much as it could to keep up with the cost of it. These are all first chakra related items. And people know this, right? They're living with this weight, the weight of the world on their shoulders. And then you have people who are supposed to be in leadership positions who are absolutely in denial and gaslighting the rest of us. And by the way, the United States, while it is up to its third fucking eye in gaslighting, we're not the only country that gaslights, okay? Gaslighting is a global operation. And you have people who are basically saying, look, here's how bad it is. Here's how bad it is. They've actually redefined the definition of recession, and then they change it on the Wikipedia page, and then they lock the freaking Wikipedia page, which defines recession. It's so completely Orwellian. So Orwellian. Now we're into that South Node in Scorpio and other people's money, right? And the locking of the Wikipedia page means that it's fixed. You can't get in. You have all these people, well, I know what real recession is. And no, that's not the definition of real recession. So again, we're going to get into this tonight. I think we're up to speed pretty much with everybody that's here. If I missed your name, I apologize. Thank you for being here. There's Kabuki Theater. Coffee with John every Sunday morning, right? He's the best. Holly Beth. I just want to say hi to Holly Beth. Okay. Let's go back to that video. That video is so bizarre. But I'm gonna go back there because it's worth seeing again. Let me see if I can track it down. It won't be that hard because I have it here as a link. So this is from the Commonwealth Games 2022 highlights. Let's go through this a little bit. All right. So the first thing we see here, you do a screen share. By the way, I want to thank Ben for sending this to me. I'm pretty sure he's watching. Great guy. Ben brought this to my attention. I said to him, I'm so using this on Sunday night. That's one of the benefits of having a really switched on network and group of people that watch the show. I get sent some really top-notch stuff at times. Okay. So first of all, here we have this person staring down, not just a bull. This is like a fucking mega bull. This. You know what's interesting about this? This is like shit I'd see at Burning Man. Seriously, this is like a Burning Man thing. And now it's at the Commonwealth Games. So it's like Burning Man has gone planetary. So we see the bull, and of course we see the ring. Aha. We're going to have a little look-see at the ring in a little bit. And then we have this woman, and right here, right there, what does this remind you of? Okay. Do you remember Avatar and how the hair in Avatar like linked into, you know, their little Pegasus animals, creatures, and they'd fly them around, and their thoughts and then the brain of those flying winged creatures would be connected, right? This is what this reminds me of right here. That's what it reminds me of. So she is going to seduce the beast. And in her left hand, she has a crystal. And then all around her is what? These women that look like they're from the Bulgarian women's choir, but maybe also the Handmaid's Tale. But they're all women. This is feminine, right? This is the feminine energy that is subduing this raging bull, right? It is the feminine that is subduing this raging beast. And it's taking us back into the age of Taurus and the quote unquote goddess cults of the age of Taurus. Theoretically, this is what's happening here. And it almost looks like even a ring. And it would be like, and maybe it's not a ring, but it looks like a ring. So it would be like a ring within a ring. Right. So we have the ring here, we have the outer ring. Sorry, so let's go ahead. Let's see what she's got. I've got the volume down on this. So the bull is snorting and she's like, okay. All right, now here it's this one. Okay. So she comes in. She doesn't have the same hair thing. She comes in and she's got like a crystal in her left hand and a crystal in her right hand. Now, theoretically, that's her hand. It's an open palm. There it is. She's got the open palm and she is soothing the beast, right? She might even have one of these little, yeah, she does. She's got a little avatar tail too, doesn't she? Yeah, she's got the avatar tail. All right, so what do we have up here? Let's see so we have Iron Link. Are these the sponsors? Charles Gray. These are all the fucking sponsors of the event. What's up here? I saw something with the Hyatt. Oh, that's interesting. So these people are the sponsors of this creature, right? So it's also dealing with like mammon and money. It's very interesting. All right. So she is soothing the savage beast. Now, keep in mind that we have at the beginning, right? We see this woman in the background, right here. I guess they're a tag team. And she happens to be white and blonde. And then she happens to be brunette and black. So we have duality here. And we're already in this kind of alchemical reconciliation of opposites, theoretically. This, by the way, these people know what they're doing. Some of it is also the tide of political correctness. But we see here this woman who does happen to be black, right? And I got into it with this Twitter debate a couple of weeks ago. It was this woman from California, and she was totally like blown out, lefty liberal, hardcore progressive. And I had an experiment in mind. And my experiment was, well, let's see if I can find, and I normally don't do this because it's not even really worthwhile in a lot of ways, but let's see if we can find some common ground with this person. And I was trying to wrap their head around the fact that there is a predator class, an economic predator class, which she seemed to agree with. But then it came down to the definition of the economic and the predator class, which we did not agree with. And she said that we have to wipe out the patriarchy, and that what we have to do is we have to follow the lead of black women. She was not black, by the way, not based on her picture. And I don't think if she was black, she'd be, fronting a picture that resembled really a middle-aged white liberal woman. I don't think that would happen. So we have to step, and I hope you'll join us. Those were her words. I hope you'll join us, and that we have to step behind black women. They're our only hope. Now, I'm not judging that. Well, not really. I kind of am, because I don't think that's our only hope. Just like if somebody said, well, why don't you go ahead and step behind Muslim men? They're our only hope. No, I don't believe that. And even if they said, well, why don't you go ahead and just step behind white men? No, I don't believe that white men are going to be our only hope, right? If we're going to get through this, we're going to have to transcend a lot of those labels and get to the quote unquote truth, right? And the truth is that, we've been hacked, we've been manipulated, and we have a lot more in common than we don't in a lot of ways. But they've done a great job of dividing and conquering. So those dialogues aren't really going to happen, generally speaking. But to this woman's point, this is what's going on here. This is what's going on here. This is symbolic of what she's saying, because it's this woman who theoretically will tame the beast system. This is what's being broadcast. This is what's being transmitted. That might be the woman's choir of Bulgaria. Who knows? Back there. So here she comes. And she's going to tame the beast. And now the beast is going to immediately lay down his iron horns. And together we'll relink with the Iron Age and the age of the goddess, right? This is what's happening. Now, I've read the comments for this, and there are people say, "Oh, this is a cult. This is satanic," and it really does kind of feel like that in a lot of ways, right? This is just really bizarre. This is how they open the Commonwealth Games, but there's a message here, and it's commensurate with this time that we're in. Right. Even this is very Uranian, and in fact, it actually even looks like it might even be Tartarian in some degree. But that's the message, right? This is the message that the only way that we can, theoretically subdue this beast system is to reinitiate this whole idea of the goddess in the Bronze Age. Which, look, it happened. I feel like it's not about going backwards. It's about integrating and moving forwards. So again, this may not be the most politically correct breakdown of this event, but this is how I see it. There's not one man in this mix, and it is through the power of the feminine, which happens to be Venusian, which happens to be theoretically again Taurus, that this mighty mechanical beast is brought into submission. And of course, don't forget the magic crystal. You got to have the magic crystal, because you can't defeat the beast without the magic crystal. Anyway, I just thought it would be an interesting thing to start off on. And you know, things get really kind of complicated and entangled, because I think we need like the absolute best of the feminine, and we need the absolute best of the masculine now. The absolute best. And that one should not outweigh the other. And that's why we're so fucked up, is because they become, if this were the scales, right? The Libra and scales, the other Libra being the other sign ruled by Venus, although I think Taurus rules the Earth rules Taurus, but that's another discussion. The scales would be like this, right? Like, okay, well, the importance of being feminine over the past 35 years, since 1968, let's say, a little bit more than that. But the importance of being feminine, way down, you know, down here, down to the ground. And then the importance of being masculine, well, it's way up here. Or you can reverse it, right? If you're doing hierarchies, like this would be feminine up here, you know, and then, you know, men would be down here. So we've really become out of whack and out of balance. So what we need is we need balance. We need balance. And just even that woman's comment with, oh, just, you know, just the future is black women and just get behind them. I hope you join us in our revolution to overthrow the. I don't really have any desire to overthrow the fucking patriarchy. I don't have a desire to overthrow the matriarchy. You know, what I want to experience is the unirky. This should be a unicorn, by the way. No, the unirky, where we're all, you know, the true Aquarian age is where you understand who you are and what your purpose is, even if it's evolving. And in the Aquarian age, theoretically, there's a symbiosis between the masculine parts and the feminine parts of who you are. And you may be more feminine, but there are probably some masculine things that you can do every now and then. If even the most masculine dudes I know have, you know, like my father was a super fucking macho dude. And look, he was a jeweler, right? And he was a great cook. By the way, it's his birthday tomorrow. If he was here, August 1st. And we've gotten so thrown off because of this cultural deception. And it is a cultural deception. And people are waking up from the cultural deception. It's unfortunate what we've had to go through. But it's happening. It's definitely happening. All right. I thought this was an interesting place to start the show. So let's go to a few more places, shall we? Why don't we go to Wall Street? Because I think Wall Street is in the mix here. When we think of Wall Street, you know, what is one of the representations of Wall Street? We've looked at this before. We have the great bull on Wall Street. If you haven't seen it before, here it is. Yeah, somebody put this, oh, look. Isn't it kind of like what we just saw? Really? Isn't this a little bit of a foreshadowing here? Sculptor of Wall Street Bull says, fearless girl horns in on his work. Did we just see this in the last, what is this? Texas Public Radio on air now. In that last video, it's kind of a micro model of it in a lot of ways, isn't it? Interesting. But the bull shows up in Wall Street. If you've been there, you've seen it. If you haven't, there it is. So Wall Street, guess when Wall Street was enacted? I'll show you. The New York Stock Exchange had their first trade. Hold on a second. That's not the right date. Oh, hold on. I got the wrong date there, boys and girls. Give me 1 second. Yes. Okay. There we go. Quality control. As an astrologer, it is a very important attribute. It's an essential attribute. Okay. All right. So let's go through this. Okay, so the New York Stock Exchange, the NYSE, made its first trade publicly at 10:10 in the morning on May 17th, 1892. By the way, I do believe that they use astrology in order to fire up events like this one. So we have a grand trine with Saturn, the sun, and early placement of Moon Mars in Aquarius. So we have this out of element grand trine, but there nonetheless. And look at where the degree of the sun, 27 Taurus. And look at the true node, 16. And where are we right now? So currently the true node is at 18 to 16, right there. And we know that the nodes work backwards. So later this week, Wall Street will have its nodal return, or the New York Stock Exchange. Almost the same thing. And here we have Uranus coming in right there on that true node. We have Mars coming in right there on that true node, 18 degrees. So the market is going to be not only interesting on Monday, and by the way, for all intents and purposes, in the Grand Trine, you may see very robust trading tomorrow. And this actually might, on the surface, start off well. But there are other things that are happening here that could be potentially quite problematic. I would say with Wall Street, it'll be closer to when Uranus begins to conjunct the sun. And then around a little bit before that, we're going to have Saturn squaring off against that sun. So we're talking the first of the year next year. But we should, there could be some quakes. There could be some quakes on Wall Street. Or you could even see how it all works, right? This idea of the golden bull and assets, resources, mammon, other people's money in Scorpio. Down here, there's the South Node, Uranus. Let's get rich quick with Uranus. That's the plan there. So I think it'll be interesting tomorrow because on Friday, things were just starting to move into alignment on Friday. But tomorrow on Wall Street, these transits are going to start to lock in. We're going to start to lock in a bit more. And we could have a very robust cycle in the morning. I'm curious as to a bit later on here when we see Mars conjuncting that sun and the nodal return, because it's almost as if there's a peak for Wall Street or the New York Stock. There's a peak, like we're coming into this peak zone, and it will once this peak is reached, which will be later in the week with the true node. Once this peak is reached, the energy is going to shift. Of course, this happens, every 19 and a half years with the nodes, roughly. So this is going to be, certainly it'll be busy. And we may see some things that are very unusual with Wall Street and the New York Stock Exchange. There could be unusual trades, unusual movement. Clearly, things like metals, rare earth minerals, the market was built for these things. And we could see a major surge in some of those, commodities, particularly tomorrow, and a very active market. For me, the bigger piece around Wall Street has to do with Uranus and the Uranus transit over the sun, which will not happen until later next year. That's when I think things can get really, really wonky. And even, again, I think it's March. Saturn goes into Pisces in March. So it's retrograde now. It's going to have another square against the sun, but that won't be happening until like January of next year. So this is interesting from the Wall Street perspective, because we can see how it's all kind of lined up here. Not quite at those higher degrees, Sun, Juno, but definitely on the true node. And keep an eye on Mars. And that would be sometime in August. So where's Mars right now? Mars is at 17, right? So I think it's late August when Mars goes into Gemini, right? Or it's right around the end of Leo. So I think it's August 21st, right around there. Because I know this for a fact, because that degree of Leo is Trump's ascendant. And that's when Mars enters into Gemini. So that's going to be around the 21st. That's when Mars will be on the sun here in Taurus in the New York Stock Exchange chart. The other thing is Chiron. And, Chiron has been around Jupiter and in the ninth house here. It's an interesting transit of Chiron. And I don't believe that Chinese companies are allowed to trade on Wall Street, which is very Chiron-like. And I wonder if that will change because the way that the Chinese companies are rated, and I think Masaki and I talked about this, is that if they have their own version of Standard & Poor's, and their biggest companies that can trade on Wall Street have kind of like the lowest Standard & Poor's score for a company in China. So it makes it almost impossible for them to trade. But that may not be the case, especially with Jupiter next year in Aries in the ninth house. And Wall Street may be looking for, more money, more investment money, and particularly from, foreign entities and foreign countries. Jupiter's retrograde right now. So Wall Street will go through its Jupiter return, which it does every 12 years. So I don't necessarily think that this is a harbinger for disaster, although the Saturn square is definitely tricky here. We have Saturn at 22, so it's basically gone backwards, right? So the next Saturn square is going to be around January next year. And by that time, Uranus will probably be right around 20, maybe 19 or 20, kind of back in the mix where it is now, because it goes retrograde too. We've already seen the sun and Uranus go past this square with Chiron, right? So I just wanted to bring this up to show you how Taurus plays a role in Wall Street, and how really right now Wall Street's about to experience its nodal return, Mars on the true node. So I think there's going to be a lot of trading. And I don't think it'll be volatile, because it really locks in to this grand trine. right? Saturn in Virgo. You look at this grand trine, and Saturn in the second house is not always the best Saturn, but in trine with the sun here, like it really supports this idea of the market, especially over the long haul. And this thing has been in existence since 1892. And in May of this year, what was it, 1892, 1992, that's 100. And then we have 2002, 2012, 2000, I'm still counting my hands. So it's gone through its 130th birthday this year. 13 is an interesting number. So when you look at something that's been around for 130 years, you know, you can see the Saturn Sun trine in effect right there. And, you know, theoretically, if you're looking at the market, you would look at this and go, yeah, go blue chip, go long term. Saturn trine the sun. If you know, you can see the tech stuff kind of baked in here with Mars, Moon in Aquarius. And even they're part of the trine. Interesting chart. Very, very interesting chart. But every now and then, we've got this Uranus square to the moon, Uranus square Mars, and then opposing the midheaven. And that midheaven comes right in at 1 Taurus. So every now and then we can see how the market will do very Uranian things. And especially when we went through the real first Great Depression in the 20s. There were a number of depressions along the way. That was a big one. And there are people who are very good at looking at these things, not just the astrological factors, but also the macroeconomic factors. And there are people who are saying, we are not just headed into a recession, which we are, we're already there. We are headed into a depression. And I think that you don't have to be a fucking astrologer to figure that out. When you have companies that are laying people off, I'll give you an example. A good friend of the show, was texting her on Friday night, and she was employed by a company in Oregon, Salem, Oregon. And she had left that company a few months ago. She got a better job. Not that the job was terrible. It was a good job, but she got a better job for her, which paid more, engaged her more. So she got out of that company. She texted me and told me that, and this is a company, but I'm not going to tell you the company, but this is a company just shut its doors, People could not even get inside. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew what was happening. And they said, we'll send you your stuff. They couldn't even get to their computers. They didn't want them to get to their computers because they were laying them off. This is happening across the board. When you start to see big layoff numbers, and they're happening, and then you start to see these big inflation numbers, no matter, you know, what the White House wants to do, redefine it, lock the fucking Wikipedia page, they're happening. And then you begin to see these other things, right, start to take place. Where is this all headed? We are headed to a place financially, and I'm just being straight up here. And I know I talked about being a bamboo in the wind last week, and I still believe that, by the way. But we're headed to a place financially that is not good. And the whole idea of building back better, like, let's just take this thing right back to the Bronze Age. Let's go back to that bull. Let's take it right back to the Bronze Age. And we'll put people back into this, you know, semi-agrarian, you know, a goddess worshiping, bull worshiping culture where you're going to eat bugs. Think about that too. The whole bug eating thing that is so fucking primal. It's like you've just come out of the, you know, you're like the hominid, the biped that just comes out of the swamp. And what's the first thing you look for to eat? Oh, I'm going to eat a bug. I'm hungry. I mean, it takes you all the way back to that level of subsistence. Oh, don't worry, we'll build it back better, which is what we've heard, right? So again, there's this idea, because Uranus in Taurus
is de-evolutionary. And I've talked about this before, right? It represents a de-evolutionary cycle. Uranus and Scorpio is exalted. All these cool inventions and all this cool tech shit that happened during that time. Now we're in a de-evolutionary phase. So de-evolutionary, in fact, that you're going to crawl out of the swamp of reality and you're going to look for the closest thing next to you to eat. And it'll have multiple legs or it'll be slithering. That's what we're dealing with here. What's the other side of that? I talked about this on my show last week. The other side of that, well, if you want meat, there is always human meat. You can eat that. So where does that come into play? That's all fucking Taurus shit, literally, right? Think of that movie where they crash in the Andes. Survive, is that what it's called? Soccer team, what do? They want to be eating each other. That's Taurus survival level stuff. First chakra, survival level stuff. Climb out of the swamp, eat the bugs, eat the worms, or eat each other. It's not elevated at all. And we'll build it back better from there. We'll make sure that whoever's around, after all this is said and done, you'll get a nice juicy burger once a week. But we're not going to tell you what's in it. Don't worry, the show gets more uplifting. But we have to go here, right? We have to go here. What else is connected to the sign of Taurus? Babylon. Listen to the name. Babylon, right? Babylon. Again, theoretically, it takes us back to the age of Taurus with Babylon. Let's see what this animal is. Is that an elephant? I love elephants. Aren't elephants cool? They knock the trunk off and everything. What the fuck is up with these vandals? Poor elephant. What the hell is going on here? Jesus. Let's take a closer look at that. Is that a lion? That might be a lion, right? What is going on here? I don't think this lion is eating this person. Wow. That's the Lion of Babylon in Iraq. Yeah, the Lion of Babylon is, I don't think he's invested in eating that person. I think there's something else going on there with the Lion of Babylon. I think they have some elephants too. Let me see if we go back here. That is the Lion of Babylon. Are they all the Lion of Babylon? The Winged Lion of Babylon. And that is the Ishtar Gate. Let me see if I can bring this back up. That's the Ishtar Gate in Babylon. Of course, we have the Tower of Babel, right? The Babel Tower, where we have Nimrod and the idea that there is one language. Yes, that's not an elephant. That's the Lion of Babylon. All right, what else do we have here in Babylon? The MCU is in Babylon as well, apparently. And of course, we have the UNESCO jumping into the mix with these very unusual creatures, and UNESCO naming Babylon a new city, right? Or a city in general. What's interesting about this in Babylon is that as we come into this time period where we have all this incredibly powerful bull symbolism, Babylonian symbolism, Babylon. There's also the city in Saudi Arabia, which is part of Neom, right? Which is this linear city. And that's being pretty much announced at the same time, right? The linear mega city. And these things are happening simultaneously. So this is the daily Sabah. And if you're not aware of it, this is the plans that the Saudis have for Neom and their linear city. This is what it's going to look like. So instead of having a giant tower in the air, they're going to have a 135-kilometer long city. So a handout picture provided by Saudi's Neom on July 26th. So we're moving into Mars, Uranus, true node territory, right there. It's going to be 1,640 feet tall. Add that up, you'll get 20, right? 500 meters tall. And this is where they plan on having their mega city, Neom. Mirrored, all mirrored. Supposedly that's where they're going to collect their power, right? Of course, it's this green, wet dream. They're looking for investors. It's supposed to be what it looks like. And you're going to be able to row in it and everything. Look at that. Right there. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, reborn. You got to say, right? It looks pretty cool on some level. Where's your mask? Where's your burqa? Come on, burqa up, baby. Oh, yeah, there's the Pope in Canada. How crazy is that? So that's another element to where we are. This is theoretically a signal for the rebirth of Babylon. Mars, Uranus, true node. Let's put this thing moving forward. Now, I'm not saying that the city that we're talking about here, this linear city inside of Neom, is an exact reincarnation of Babylon, but it's happening right around the same time. By the way, this comes out of another style of architecture that was talked about a long time ago, the 1890s, by a Spanish city planner. And the only reason I know that is because I read about it today when I was looking this up. Didn't have any real foreknowledge of it. The linear city is reborn with Saudi Arabia's plans for a 106-mile mirrored city. The new renderings of the Saudi Arabian city are a look into the future and the past. It's called The Line. New wonders for the world. The Line. Neom, The Line. You can even see here that something like this pre-existed. This is kind of interesting because it does get into some Tartarian territory here. Some are calling it a huge dystopian wall in the desert. One might also point out that it would be impossible for a young woman to actually fly around Saudi Arabia alone in jeans and a t-shirt as in the video. Well, we pointed that out. Saudi women must have a male guardian, but let's put that aside for now and look at how the concept has evolved. So theoretically, this is a rendering of what this originally looked like a long time ago, not in Saudi Arabia. In our earlier post, The Line, we noted the idea of a linear city makes a lot of sense. Madrid had the first with La Ciudad Lineal in 1882, built around a streetcar line. Edgar Chambliss described Road Town in 1910, writing, "The idea occurred to me to lay the modern skyscraper on its side and run the elevators. This is all very Taurian, right? When we think of Taurus, we do think of building. Donald Trump has Taurus on his midheaven, and what does he do? He builds skyscrapers and hotels and casinos. This is part of the chart. Whatever else you think of Trump, if you've got Taurus on your midheaven, you need to build. That's important. You need to build something. It could be a structure, a business, whatever. You're here to build. You're here to construct. Your path into the world is based on having a foundation and then moving up and up and up from that. But here, literally, they've taken the idea of verticality and made it horizontal, which in a lot of ways is even more Taurus. Because up at the top of the chart, you're talking about Capricorn, and you're talking about, buildings that rise or mountains or peaks, right? That's the top of the chart. This might be at the IC, where instead of going upwards, it goes this way. Or it might even be from the AC to the DC, spanning the entirety of the chart, from east to west. So this is interesting. And it's certainly an interesting concept to be announced during this Mars-Uranus true node conjunction, where we're talking about building something that's like really outside, right? Like that whole structure is like super Uranian. Because normally when we think of these, even with like Babel, right? The Tower of Babel, the biggest fucking tower on the face of the earth at that time. But then now it's inverted. Instead of going this way, it goes this way. And that's Uranus in kind of a nutshell as well. So the Saudis started talking about this again, 5 days ago. So that gives you an idea here of how the astrology works. From a certain perspective. It's big. It's being built. It's very Uranian. It's a horizontal version of the Tower of Babel, theoretically. And it's kind of interesting. I wouldn't want to live there, but it's kind of interesting on some level, right? So Babylon is also part of the discussion. We're living literally. I mean, look around you. Look around you. And if you could think of, let's say, Babylon as being a place that would be worthy of some form of destruction, because it's a fallen world, and there are descriptions of Babylon that fit that. There are descriptions of Babylon that do resemble the fallen world, whether they're true or not, because we know that history can be really, really skewed. But the history that we do know about Babylon is that it's a fallen world, and we're dealing with the Tower of Babel, which represents one tower for all and one rule for all, one language for all. And theoretically, like God said, no, we're going to split this up, and you're going to speak different tongues, so you won't be ruled as easily. I mean, who knows? Maybe that is an antiquated notion now. Maybe speaking the same language might actually be a good thing. English started out that way. But if we look at the dark portrayal of Babylon as a result, as it relates to kind of where we are now, again, Uranus, Mars, true node, all in Taurus, the bull, look around. Honestly, I think we live in a fallen world, more fallen than it's ever been. And I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Those were kind of, my very formative years. And there was weird shit back then. Like, I've talked about it before. I grew up in California. There was like fucking something weird happening every week in California when I was growing up. 1 week it's the Zodiac Killer. The next week it's the fucking Black Panthers and Angela Davis. And then the next week we got Jonestown. Somewhere along the way we've got Charles Manson and the Manson family. And then we've got Mick Jagger and Altamont and, all that crazy fucking weird shit. Like, I grew up in that, right? That was my milieu. Yes. And that It's part of my upbringing. But looking back on that, it all seemed very weird, but also manageable because there were other things that were kind of offsetting that, you know? There were things that were offsetting that. It wasn't like the entire world was going nuts, but it has right now. And there's not a lot offsetting it. Everything has just gone into full tilt, pretty much, except for the people who are waking up. That's a whole different story. And we're looking at, I think, a lot of the values that we disregarded and we thought were either passé or square. And we're looking back in those values and we're saying, you know what? There was something there, right? There was a cohesion and a glue that kept our world together in a lot of ways. That's what we had. That's what we had. And I think this is what's happening with people now. They're waking up and going, wow, a lot of the stuff that we took for granted is maybe something we should do our best to hold on to, which is also very fixed and very Taurian. So the idea with Uranus is to theoretically embrace something new and radical and different, like that city, the giant mirrored city in Saudi Arabia, which is the Tower of Babel, laid sideways. But there's also this idea through the inversion of Uranus that we look at things that we took for granted, not even took for granted, but we're conned into, right? We were conned into these things. For instance, we were conned into something like casual sex. That was a big con. Casual sex was a big con. And growing up in the 60s and the 70s, again, where are we? We're down in our first chakra. We're down into Taurus, right? We're down there. We're down, the next chakra up is the second chakra, and that's Scorpio. That's the scorpionic chakra. And you go back and look at all the messaging from the 1960s and the 1970s, it was all about grabbing hold of your libido, and whether it was advertising, sex sells, or movies or music or whatever that was, right? You had Playboy, you had the gratuitous demonstration of that in our environment. So again, growing up in the 60s and the 70s, what did I want? Well, I want that. I want that thing. Because number one, I'm a kid. I'm like, wow, look at that. That's really something. And then number two, our society was the thing that was driving it. Like, it was cool. You throw in some alcohol, which by the way relates to Taurus. And we get algol. We get the word alcohol from algol, right? Losing your head. When you drink too much alcohol, what do? You lose your head, which is algol, right? Right there. The capo, which is the boss. What does the boss do? The boss will fucking cut your head off if you don't listen to him. So we had all of that, and it got accelerated to this point now where it is way out there, the far extreme edge. We're at the far extreme edge of those developments of what we would call the sexual revolution. And what is Uranus and Mars and the true node in Taurus? Another iteration is looking back and going, you know what? Some of those values were actually pretty good. Especially if you've lived through that time, which a lot of us did, and you experienced that time, which a lot of us did, and experienced some of the dark side or the backlash of that time. And some of us did that as well. And now we have the perspective to look around and see the extreme edge of the sexual revolution and the identity revolution. It's all there. It's all there, right? So that's another part of this. And people are going, well, not sure I want that. We want something different. We're being shown now and demonstrated in the most extreme possible way, right? It's almost like Babylon itself has been reanimated. And the true node in Taurus has, I believe, elucidated that. And we look around and it's like, what the fuck, right? I saw this video. I'll show you. It's on, I have it on my Twitter feed. I retweeted this thing. So I can find it. Yeah, tweets and replies. Where is, did it get taken down? It might have gotten taken down. Let me see if oh, here it is. It's right here. God, this thing is just so weird. All right, first of all, I want to do just a disclaimer that, you know, I'm not a big church person. I've never really been a big church person, but I do respect people that do go to church. My mother goes to church every Sunday. She's part of Altar Guild. If that's a part of your life, I think that's great, right? And I also respect God. I respect God. You don't blaspheme the Most High. And again, whether Jesus is a historical character or an actual avatar, right, Son of God, you know, Sananda, like I respect that. It's not a big deal for me. I don't have to like run around and you know, theoretically make fun of like this astrotheological myth, right? Because there's a part of me that just says, look, I'm not going to disrespect that. I'm just not. I've seen people that have. I've seen real life circumstances. Like there was this one time, I think it was around 2017, where there was this guy who was making fun. It was in Portland. He was making fun of a group of people across the street from him in Portland who were out there and they were banging their drum and, you know, praising Jesus. And again, that's not me. I don't do that. But I sure as hell would not mock those people. I would not mock those people. And this guy mocked those people. And what happened? He gets hit by a fucking car. Like within moments. I've seen this happen on more occasions than one. So I know better than to do that. You just don't do it. And even if you want to poke the bear, as it were, you'll find out, right? You'll find out. And, you know, I don't like fucking poke it Allah. I leave that shit alone because there are ramifications, right? Now, the institutions, you know, these fake preachers, they deserve everything they get. And the Christians who have allowed this world to de-evolve, they deserve everything they get, in my opinion, because they've let it get to this place. And they're reading their Schofield Bibles and they're just going to beam up. You know, when the shit hits the fan, they'll be up there and they'll have their Diet Cokes, although they're in heaven, so they don't have to worry about a Diet Coke. And then they'll have their popcorn and they'll watch everything happen. And after it's all said and done, they'll get put back on the earth and then they'll get to rule. I don't believe that. And I think it's been one of those things that has been a soporific and has allowed this thing to get as bad as it has. That said, I'm going to play this video. And to me, this is where I begin to look at a different version of Mars, Uranus, and the true node. And just like the Tower of Babel theoretically was struck and smashed, and the Tower card in the major arcana is a symbol of this, right? And you see the man jumping off the tower, right? It is this idea of pride, of having too much pride. And when you have that, you're gonna have a fall. So let me show you this. And when I saw this, I was like aghast. I had to give you the disclaimer here. I don't want to listen to it. So obviously this is a church, and obviously this is not your everyday preacher. Now, let me just say, these people have all agreed to be there. That's the other part of it. They've agreed to be there. So they have their own agreements, even though I may not agree with them. So here we go. So this guy is bringing in the new anointed one, right? The new saintly class. And look at what happens here. And who knows? Maybe this is just for show. Maybe this is just like the subway video in New York. But it speaks volumes, right, into the world we're in. And to me, this is Babylon-esque. This is the Mars-Uranus true node conjunction and the destruction, right? Because that's also part of this, is the destruction of form, which is neither sacred or holy. And we're in that, we're moving closer to that point. We're moving closer to what? We're moving closer to the bullseye, right? That's Aldebaran. We're moving closer to that point where if we're not living from that place, we are in danger of really living out of balance with God, the Most High, Spirit, whatever you want to call it, right? We're really tilting pretty far out of bounds. And I believe there are ramifications for that. There are ramifications for it because we're allowing people to fuck with creation. And we've been doing it for a while. And we're still battling it. We're still dealing with it. You know, we can go back to 2020 and Operation Warp Speed and everything that came out of that. We can go back further than that. And we're looking around, right? We're dealing with the earth. And to me, you know, the earth is Terran, which is also very close to Tauran, right? Terran and Tauran are very related. So we're dealing with earth-related issues with Taurus, even though the ruler is Venus. And we have been essentially put into a trance, and a lot of us have been asleep for a very long time. And now we're waking up. And this is, again, part of the wake up, right? When you see an image like that, or you see other images, or you listen to that doctor in Australia, I'll play you the doctor. It's on my feed. Let me play it. And again, I give him props for speaking up. And it may not, again, it may not be the most eloquent, right? I give him some props here. Let me do a share screen. But again, this is the waking up process. This is the thunderclap. This is Mars and Uranus coming down and cracking, right into our reality. And if you're willing to listen to it and hear it, there's merit. Not everybody is willing to do it. So I'm going to play this because I talked about it. Somebody asked, where's the link to it? Let me play it for you. I got the audio on and everything. So let's try that. So here it is. I'm going to put my headphones on if you don't mind. I'm going to listen to it. So here we go. The doctor in Australia.
Something that we need to incorporate into our ways of doing business, and then of course in our health sector.
So they're all in a fucking trance right now.
Omar, I'm sorry. My colleagues of the AMA, my name is Dr. William Bay, and I'm a GP registrar, and I'm here today to ask you to join with the people of Australia and stop forcing these vaccines on people who are getting killed by them. Dr. Professor Paul Kelly is a liar. He is gaslighting all of you, and there is only a 0.27% fatality rate with the infection, and natural immunity has been proven recently in a Qatar study that it gives you 97.3% immunity for life against all variants. All GPs, all doctors of Australia, You are on notice by the people of Queensland. This is the Queensland People's Protest, and you have been warned. Sure. I'm a doctor, sir. You have been warned. The people of Australia are hearing you. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4. How many shots before you hit the floor? 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4. How many shots before you say no more? 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4. How many shots before the people say no more? Case fatality 0.27%. Natural immunity gives you 97.3% protection for life against all variants forever. Look it up. That's the Qatar study. Look it up. The people need you, doctors. Don't let them down. Do not let them down. My name is Dr. William Bay, and I'm from the Queensland People's Protest. And I'm here to say that we must stand with the people of Australia and not let them get injured by this vaccine anymore. They cannot be harmed. They should not be harmed. We must protect them. We must.
So there you go. That's what I was talking about. And if you were part of that crowd, right, that's like a thunderclap. Now, how effective was he? I don't know. I'm not sure how effective he was. Again, he's a doctor. He's not really schooled in, who is though? We're in new territory here. We're in new territory. Maybe he got to a couple of people. He emptied the room. He emptied the room. That's where we are now, right? Where the thunderclap is coming. And he has a thunderclap, and he decides that he's going to share it with people, whether it's articulate or confrontational, whether it's the Soylent Green or people kind of moment, right? Anyway, I hope it was effective. I hope it, and we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more of this kind of Mars Uranus thunderclap moment. And we're just getting into this transit, right? Tomorrow is August 1st. It's a very interesting day, August 1st. Jerry Garcia's birthday, by the way. I think it's Jerry Garcia's birthday. Jim Carroll, people who died, it's his birthday. And of course, my dearly departed father, August 1st. So this is another component to what we're going through now. And you may have some of this in your own life. You may have this kind of pent up intensity and not always know what to do with it. I think, it's pretty obvious that a lot of the things that have been there for us are being either radically changed or what's the word I'm looking for? Altered. Like even gardening. A lot of people get into gardening and growing things. And this has been a terrible year for gardening. As far as Taurus goes, shitty year. Incredibly shitty year. Super hot. The yields have not been great, even, with the hot weather. So, the way to work these things out, it's not always there, but we have to continue to evolve. We have to continue to be novel and inventive because that's what Uranus brings. That we're in this place where we're altering our fixed approach to life and not abandoning the energy of moving forward because Mars is moving forward here. It might be a lumbering beast, or it might be the Burning Man bull. Actually, that bull was made in Birmingham, England, by the way. I found that out. But it could be that, right? But we have to maintain our momentum. Uranus, because Mars is a planet that moves forward, right? We talk about Mercury and motion. Mars is about moving forward. That's Mars. Unless it's retrograde or, Mars is about moving forward. So with the conjunction with Uranus, we have to move forward in a unique way, in a novel way. So the other thing I was looking at around this whole thing is this. And this goes back to the symbol of the bull in that very odd kind of opening at the Commonwealth Games. And that's people with nose rings, which I think has really proliferated, like the whole kind of modern primitive, which has been around for a while. Like the whole nose ring thing has really proliferated. Now, what's interesting about this guy, I guess it's called septum piercing. When you pierce the septum, like this, and I've seen this. This has been fairly common. This almost looks like it's the true fucking node. I mean, look at it right here, right? That's like the true node through the nose. And where did we see that? We saw that nose ring in the snout of the bull, right here, and being kind of led around, right? Same deal, snout of the bull. And I've seen more of this in the last year. There's the true node in the septum than I have at almost any other time. And I've seen a lot of it in, quote unquote SJWs. So she's got the hoop and the septum ring. She's doubling up there. You know what I mean? I've seen a lot of this in the hardcore purple hair. Here we go, right here. That kind of SJW world. But she's got the true node there. And this is kind of interesting. She's got a little chain going through the top of her nose. But this is all very Taurian. And again, I've just noticed more of this over the last year. And I've noticed more of the full ring than I have of the true node in the septum. Although I've seen some, look at that. That looks pleasant. Right. So this comes out of the whole modern primitive kind of world. Let's go people with people with hoop nose rings. That's what we want the hoop. The hoopty nose ring. People with hoop nose rings. So we see that guy again. It's interesting about the algorithms. They always give you the most kind of, beautiful, telegenic kinds of examples. I've seen this with Google. All these people look stylish. It's like a stylish algorithm. They're not going to give you the unstylish algorithm. Let's do SJWs. Let's see what happens. Let's see what we got here. Getting closer. We got the colored hair look, right? But again, they're not going to get. They're just going to continue to make this kind of cover of Vogue. Oh, it's also stylish and cool. A lot of times when you see people with the hoop nose rings, they're the farthest from being stylish and cool. Trust me. But it gets back to where we are, right? And you go to the beginning of the show with the mechanical bull from Birmingham at the Commonwealth Games and the ring in the nose. And what does that mean? It means people are being led around by their fucking snouts. I mean, ultimately, that's how I see it. And it may be some representation of the modern primitive, but sometimes a cigar is a cigar. You know what I'm saying? So another interesting component to this in terms of a chart, and I actually stumbled across this, and it has to do with Ukraine. Now, I found a chart for Kiev that goes all the way back to the year 882, which is theoretically the year that Kiev became Kiev. We've looked at Ukraine's chart before. And Ukraine is a Pisces city, or I'm sorry, Pisces country, based on the 1994 moment in time where they kicked the old guy out and Victoria Nuland brought everybody cookies. So what's interesting here, right, is look at the position of the sun for Kiev, going all the way back to 882. It's at 21 degrees Taurus. Interesting. So here we go. We've got the true node has already passed over, but Mars and Uranus are approaching here. right? And even Saturn, which goes back to 19 degrees, hits the south node of Kiev. May 8th, 1882. We're playing with that timeline. This time, theoretically, this is when Kiev became Kiev. The mayor of Kiev back then. So we are now a city. So that's interesting, right? Mars. We get into this idea again of aggression, war, something explosive happening very quickly. If we're looking at the chart and the chart is playing out, I would say keep your eye on Kiev. Now, it could be something that's related to war because we're dealing with Mars. Here in this chart, we've got Mars in Capricorn. Pluto does go retrograde. I think it goes back to, I think it's retrograde now. It goes to what, like 25. So conjuncting the, Pluto right there, conjuncting Kiev's Mars. Interesting. So this is a city I would keep my eye on over the course of the next, certainly the next week to 2 weeks. I would definitely keep my eye on the city. Next year, when Uranus conjuncts that sun, I would definitely circle back and look at what's going on with Kiev. Midheaven is at 0 Pisces, which I think is kind of interesting because this is a city that has passed into a number of different hands at different times. You had the Khazarian Empire here. You had the Russians, the weird relationship between Ukraine and Poland, where sometimes the boundaries get really blurred. You can see that at the 0 point there at the top of the chart in Pisces. Like, what is it? The fluidity. Even now, we look at Ukraine and we scratch our heads and we ask ourselves, what the fuck is going on there, right? And you have Zelensky, Mr. Aquarian, who is posing for a Vogue photo shoot with his theoretical wife, right? So I would keep an eye on Kiev this week, going into next week, and as part of a longer cycle, early next year. Mars here is aggressive. It's definitely on the aggressive side. And then the square to Chiron, to me, where is it? That's at 0. The square to Chiron is going to be that south node. And that's hitting like the UN up and all these other international organizations, hitting them up for money. Oh, we need all this money to keep things going. What is really going on there? I don't think a lot of us really know. We can speculate. We get some underground news blips. We can look at some charts. But I think at a certain level, again, we watch the transfer of huge sums of money. Because once they shut down, and think about this, once they shut down Afghanistan, they couldn't move large tranches of money back through after. They needed to have another location to move large tranches of money through. And this became the new one. I'm convinced of that. We're talking billions of dollars here. And unchecked dollars, billions of dollars, huge amounts of weapons. You got that. Again, this is Kiev, the chart of Kiev. But even something like the ghost of Kiev, which people have found out is a bunch of bullshit, that is really concurrent with that 0 Piscean midheaven. It's like, what's really going on here? What's the real deal? We don't really know the real deal. I do think we're going to get a sense of the real deal, and it will be shocking. We may not see it for another year, but something here with Mars coming up on Kiev's sun at 21, hitting that Saturn, that's going to be interesting. So we're talking end of this week, beginning of next week. So keep your eye on Kiev and keep your eye on, I wouldn't necessarily say revelation, but there may be a more concerted effort to understand where the money's going. That could come up. I wouldn't doubt that at all. And, we could just go face value with Mars and say that there could be a much more aggressive front headed towards Kiev with Mars. Right? I mean, that's quite possible. Anyway, another interesting thing to look at here as it relates to where we are. So we took a look at the stock exchange, which has some astrological correspondences to the current stellium that we're staring down. We're looking at the sun here with Kiev, Babylon, the bull, the age of Babylon, the age of the bull, what's going on, how we evolve. All these things are part of it. They're all part of it. And the other thing, and I talked about this last week, and it has to do with this whole idea of bamboo and being strong and flexible. We're going to have to find ways, different kinds of ways, to maintain our strength. Maybe it's something like meditation. But if I were going to meditate, I'd go meditate with the tree. Like, I think that's where it's at. Like, I would go hang out with a tree. Something just happened there. That was interesting, Jasper. I would hang out with a tree. I know people who have done Tai Chi. Speaking of Tai Chi, Bob Raffleson just died. You're probably thinking, what the fuck does Bob Raffleson have to do with Tai Chi? Bob Raffleson was a director. He directed The Postman Always Rings Twice, 5 Easy Pieces. He was a buddy of Jack Nicholson's, who happens to be a Taurus. By the way, Jack Nicholson's probably on the clock. He's really old, probably not in very good health. I don't think he took the vax, but I could see where this would be a tricky time for Jack Nicholson. Taurus. Bob Raffleson, directed Jack Nicholson. And I interviewed him a long time ago. I was such a wet behind the ears kid, man. I was 19 years old, and I was working. I wasn't even working. I was in college at KCSM, and we had a TV show called Peninsula Weekly. And for whatever reason, I was drafted to be the guy that interviews people. And I interviewed Bob Raffleson, and I went and saw a press screening of The Postman Always Rings Twice, Jack Nicholson, and Jessica Lange. The best parts of the movie are the sex scenes, by far, because there's chemistry there. The rest of the movie doesn't really work, but there was definitely chemistry with Jack Nicholson and Jessica Lange. Anyway, I interviewed him, and it was in North Beach at a hotel, and he was a super nice guy. He also was one of the developers, the creators of the Monkees, and he told me that he used to do Tai Chi on the square down below, right? Where all the old Chinese guys. So people do Qigong and Tai Chi, Qigong with trees. So if you're going to meditate, maybe go meditate and hang out with a tree. Maybe that's part of the Mars-Uranus conjunction. Finding new ways to put your back up against the bar. You know, I used to do the show on Sunday nights underneath the tree about a year ago. I loved it, man. I don't think I could do it here. First of all, I don't like to reproduce. Like, that was a period of time. And for people that watched the show during that time, you know the tree I'm talking about. That tree was great. It was like a character. And then I would have these, these bugs that would jump on the screen and stuff. And it was a cool time. It was more accessible in a lot of ways than where I am now. If I were going to do it outside, I live in fucking mosquito land out here. It's not the same. It's just not the same. So here we are. Let's talk about Aldebaran before we tap out of here, because Aldebaran is the bullseye. It is the bullseye. Now, Aldebaran is in the constellation of Taurus, but its astrological degree lies in the sign of Gemini. But it is the bullseye. It is like the theoretical eye of Sauron. So let's take a little stop at Aldebaran before we get out of here tonight, because I think Aldebaran is interesting, and it deals with things like war. Aldebaran is a war sign. So, or it's a war star. It's a fixed star. It is one of the Behenian stars. There, I believe, are 16 of them. They're like the royal stars of the sky. Usually there's 6 out of the Behenian stars that are talked about in terms of like their significance in the chart. So we're talking Aldebaran, Algol, what else? Spica, Regulus, right? All right, so let me get into some Aldebaran here. And we'll look at it from a kind of an astronomical perspective, and then we'll look at it from an astrological perspective. And the bullseye. So let's go to Wikipedia. We'll bring up the Wikipedia definition. Aldebaran is the brightest star in the zodiac constellation Taurus. Remember now, astrologically, it's related to Gemini. If we went sidereal, we'd go Taurus. It has the Bayer designation, A Tauri, which is Latinized to Alpha Tauri, and abbreviated Alpha Tau or Tau Aldebaran. It varies in brightness from an apparent visual magnitude of 0.75 to 0.95, the 14th brightest star in the night sky. It is located at a distance of approximately 65 light years from the sun. I don't know how they figured that out, but the star lies along the line of sight to the nearby Hyades cluster. Aldebaran is a giant star that is cooler than the sun. Well, it's certainly cooler these days. With a surface temperature of 33,900 K. How do they know this? Do they have like a radio spectroscope that measures the heat from their super telescope? About 44 times the sun's, so it is over 400 times as luminous. It spins slowly. It takes 520 days to complete a rotation. So apparently Aldebaran rotates. It's believed to be a host planet several times the mass of Jupiter. So it's a star, but it's also, I guess, a planet. Interesting. Aldebaran is the brightest star of the constellation of Taurus. We already covered that. The observation night sky, I guess, is pretty easy because it's the brightest star. And it's also near one of the more noticeable asterisms in the sky, following the 3 stars of Orion's belt. You can find that. It is best seen at midnight in late November, early December. So you people in the southern hemisphere might have a better time of seeing it right now than us in the northern hemisphere. It is 5.47 degrees south of the ecliptic, so it can be occulted by the moon. So the moon can swing in front of it and cover Aldebaran. Such occultations occur when the moon's ascending node is near the autumnal equinox. Interesting. A series of 49 occultations occurred starting 29 January 2015 and ending September 3rd, 2018. Each event was visible from points in the northern hemisphere close to the equator. People in e.g. Australia or South Africa never observe Aldebaran occultation since it is too far south of the ecliptic. A reasonably accurate estimate for the diameter of Aldebaran was obtained during the occultation of 22nd September. Hey, my birthday, 1978. In the 2020s, Aldebaran is in conjunction in ecliptic longitude with the sun around May 30th of each year. So we're right at that point where it's early Gemini, May 30th, the sign changes, but sidereally still in the sign of Taurus. With a near infrared J-band magnitude of minus 2.1, only Betelgeuse, our Doradus, and Arcturus are brighter at that wavelength. So it's a pretty bright body, right? There it is. There's Aldebaran. There's the sun. And Aldebaran is the bullseye. That's what it's known as. So it has some astrological components as well, which I think I have up here. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. And I believe this is from not the Leo King, but Astrology King. I'm just going to drop in here. And I believe this is Jamie, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to look at fixed star Aldebaran as it relates to Mars, violent death, ultimate ruin by folly or pride. That gets us back into the Tower of Babel, right? Babel, Babylon, this whole idea of the tower connected to Aldebaran. It gives honor, intelligence, eloquence, steadfastness, integrity, popularity, courage, ferocity, a tendency to sedition, a responsible position, public honors, and gain of power and wealth through others, but its benefits seldom prove lasting. There is also the danger of violence and sickness. Aldebaran has been thought eminently fortunate, portending riches and honor. Now we're into the bull. It was one of the 4 royal stars or guardian stars of the sky of Persia 5,000 years ago when it marked the vernal equinox. Aldebaran is one of the 15 Behenian fixed stars, which is what we talked about. Its image is the likeness of God or of a flying man, rules carbuncle, ruby, milky thistle, and matrisilva. So this is the symbol of Aldebaran right here. It is one of the 4 keys in the heavens, also called archangel stars. So we have Michael, who is engaged, right, in the military commander of the heavenly host. It is also called the Watcher of the East, possibly since it is the bullseye. Through each of the archangels is a watcher of Gabriel, former halt, another one of the fixed stars of the south, Raphael, Regulus, we know Regulus, of the north, and Oriel, Antares of the west. So we can see them here. At one time, they marked the 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices. To Ptolemy, Aldebaran, Ptolemy, of course, being the godfather of Western astrology, Aldebaran was a Mars-type star, and indeed the red giant, because it's red, can be mistaken for that red planet at times. So it's no surprise that has been much associated with war and military careers. And the follower, as its name translates, can be well be taken to imply in the steps of the celestial general. So following in line, right? That's Michael. The idea put forward by some mundane-minded astronomers that the name means only the star comes soon after the Pleiades star group makes little sense, since every star follows some other in that manner. So why that star? In astrological practice, it is not assumed that Aldebaran necessarily promises success in war, unless it is especially well aspected to other items on the horoscope, as opposed to its Mars, Jupiter star, Antares. So Antares is another star war. It's in opposition with Aldebaran, so they would be in conflict theoretically with one another. For the inclusion of Jupiter in the Ptolemaic styling of the star actually implies more powerful than Aldebaran. So Antares and Jupiter conjunctions are more powerful. Antares, I believe, in the Sagittarian degree, right? Where the sign is Sagittarius, Antares. Any general launching an attack with one pair in the ascendant for himself to remember that the other fellow has the other star in his ascendant, right? So talking about clashing signs or clashing ascendants with these 2 stars in opposition with one another. So this is interesting. Many generals have discounted this even after consulting an astrologer and have regretted it. How about that? Aldebaran has been in the sign of Gemini since 1286, just around the height of the Christian crusades against Islam, an interesting indicator of conflict between the 2 worlds of thought. Antares, for the other side in the conflict, went into religious Sagittarius in 1272. So we can see that the 2 of them were definitely in this celestial conflict, which reflected in conflict on this plane and showed its superiority, perhaps since the Crusades never did dislodge the Saracens. The star is said to presage individuals who are restless and riotous, always stirring up popular dissent and revolution. The star is also said to inflame the minds of the people with furious quarrels, to be an enemy in quiet of peace. Malady desiring civil and domestic wars. Maternus writes that Aldebaran, when aspected by a malefic, portends sudden and unexpected involvement in riots and sedition, resulting in justly being condemned by the people. So we can go back and we can look at where the true node was in Gemini. It was conjuncting Aldebaran during that time. And what did we see? We saw this calamitous, riotous time in the streets of not just North America, but other places too. Like I remember seeing some weird shit happen in England during that summer. You know, there were people that were acting up and rioting and looting. I mean, it was going on in other places. So, you know, this is the, you know, theoretical symbolic power of fixed stars, and Aldebaran being the bullseye and being in the constellation of Taurus. So it's another thing to wrap our heads around, right? This flaming red orb, often mistaken for Mars as part of the energetic package that is connected with the head of the bull. The head of the bull. Even though it went from Taurus at one point, because fixed stars will do that too. We just saw Regulus in 2011 go from Leo to Virgo, which I've talked about before. So what does it mean for you? What is your bullseye in your life? Like, what target do you want to hit? That is a rhetorical question. So for the week ahead, what do we got? Well, we're going to start the week off with the moon in Virgo, which is critical. But as we looked at last week, because we looked at this period last week, that the moon will be in trine with these planets, right? And we looked at literally how I think the week and the energy of the week is going to unfold. I do think there will be illumination. I do think that we're going to see into and the cracks. We're really going to see into the cracks of people who believe that they had the answer. And that goes back to that video of the doctor, right? And these things are starting to snap, crackle, and pop now. That's when it gets tricky. That's when the program changes. And that's when people's attention and their vision gets pulled away and distracted. And it could happen in any number of ways. It can be monetary, right? We've laid it all out before. This is the week ahead. We did this week last week. And I'm not going to tell you to go back and watch last week's show, but you can if you want to. That's where we are. And that it's almost like a Tarantino movie in some ways. It brings us to last week's show, which we've already done, which I won't do again. But the whole idea is that we are at theoretically a crisis point, but we're also at a point now where the crisis can be illuminating. And then there's a crisis on top of the illumination. So stay flexible. Whatever happens is going to happen. And how you deal with it, how you respond to it, that is going to be key. It's key with everything now. It's how you respond to what's going on in the outer world and how it relates to your inner world. All right. I think I've given pretty solid 2.5 hours here. I think you hopefully got your money's worth tonight and you got something out of tonight's presentation. You can always book a reading with me if you like. I have an event coming up in October. David Palmer, the Leo King, is scheduled to be a part of our event in October. And that's starting on the 14th through the 17th. We have a lot of really great activities planned. You can go to robertphoenix.com if you'd like to and get your ticket and book a room for that weekend. I'll be there. I also have a number of other activities that are planned for us. You get your meals catered. It's going to be a cool time. So David Palmer, the Leo King, scheduled to be a part of our experience and looking forward to that. The other thing too, if you guys want to get into some Taurus, some real good Taurus stuff, check out my friend Christopher Lynch, who is a sponsor of my shows. And he has a business called True Hemp Science. I've had him on the Friday show. I've had him on the weekly show, and his CBD has just been a smash hit with people that have tried it. I feel pretty strongly about it. In fact, I feel very strongly about it. His gummies help me fall asleep every single night. And if you go here to truehempscience.com/ref/23, you click through that, you'll go to his website, which is very calming. It's very earthy. It's very Taurian in a lot of ways. Look at that. Isn't that just verdant and beautiful? And you can check out all of his full spectrum hemp products. It's right there, truehempscience.com/ref/23. You can just get there by dialing that in. Pretty simple. And then if you spend $100, you'll get some free product on top of that. When you check out, it'll take you to a page and it says, do you have a code? All you got to do is type in 15, that's number 1, number 5, and then MINS, MINS. That lets Christopher know you're coming from this world. You'll get some free product. He'll throw it in there for you. He'll also answer all your questions. So if you want to contact him, right, you can do that. Find us, learn, rewards, all kinds of goodies, right? He'll answer all your questions about CBD and what type of CBD would actually be really, in his mind, beneficial for you, right? There's the contact form right there. $150 gives you free shipping. And if you have a website, you want to set up an affiliate program with Christopher, you can do that. That's right there. So many options. And robertphoenix.com sets you up if you want to do an astrological reading with me. Relocation seems to be a really big thing right now. I'm very good at it. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I don't talk about it very much, but I have something called a helping hand reading. And the way that it's set up, it's cheaper than my other readings. So I know a lot of people are stretched financially. So if you're one of those people, and the way it works is you usually want to bring one issue to the table so we can drill down. This is not meant for us to spend 90 minutes on the phone together or 90 minutes on Zoom together. We do like a 40, 45-minute reading. We take one thing and we just really drill down on it. And hopefully that one thing can help you untangle a lot of other things. That's available. That's on my website. I don't talk about it very much, but it's there. And then there's a bunch of other stuff, relocation, synastry, all those things. All right. I think we're good for tonight. Thank you very much for being here. Mods, thanks for being here. Thank you for doing all that you do and keeping order inside of the chat. For everybody that's here, God bless you all. Love you all. Take good care. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to discern what's possible. We'll be back. I'm going to take tomorrow off. I have some things I got to do tomorrow. So there's not going to be any Monday show on the other side of things. So in case you're thinking about that, I'm not going to be doing a Monday show tomorrow, but I'll be back on Tuesday. We'll jump back into it on a Tuesday, and I'll see you then. I'll see you back here next week on this channel for Sunday Night Astro Live.